Bob promised me that would be appropriate for this event, so. And Craig Ferguson did something similar, but that was, I was afraid to show that clip, so. And I understand that you had Don Purdy here visiting from the Buffalo Bills a few years ago, so I just have to make it known that the museum is the largest attraction in upstate New York. We draw more people than the Buffalo Bills. And of course, at the end of the day, everybody leaves the museum happy. It's also a good example of, probably most of you have heard of the book, The Blue Ocean Strategy. It talks about looking at your competition and instead of maybe focusing on competition so much, focusing on what you could do differently to create your own space. And creativity like that can come from anywhere. And the museum is a great example of that because it was kind of not a very exciting history museum. Back in the 90s, we averaged about 100,000 in attendance. We had collections that were left to us by our founder, but really not a rhyme or reason, even though most of the collections had to do with play. And we were highly interactive, and every time they did something that appealed more to families and children, they would see their attendance spike. So it wasn't too long before they decided, you know, we need to go to a different direction here. So they took a big risk, and that's when they became the Strong National Museum of Play, carved out that area. It's the only museum of play in the world. And then, of course, in conjunction with that, they took on an aggressive expansion project and doubled their size. So now they're 282,000 square feet, and like Professor Hallberg said, the second largest children's museum in the United States, and we think we're the best. So that was a great example of how, you know, they took what really wasn't working and was quite common and made it into something completely uncommon. And our attendance has grown every year since we've done that. The 3 years in a row now we've had attendance over 500,000, so the expansion has proved to be quite successful. Part of the challenges that I have is not only am I responsible for the financials of the organization and everything that you would expect, working with auditors and so forth, but I oversee a lot of other teams at the museum. For example, the teams that clean the museum. We have a 12-person team that cleans the museum every day. The museum is open every day except for 2 days a year. So it's an incredible challenge to be able to do that. I mentioned security. I also supervise facilities. We have 2 people to work on the whole facilities of the building, and oftentimes that means working with contractors and that type of thing. So that adds a lot of variety as well. So these are just some of the areas that we have. I also work with the Live Collections team, which is a group of entomologists that take care of the butterfly garden. It's the only indoor butterfly garden in upstate New York. So you go into this area. It's about 90 degrees in there, so it's really nice to go there in the winter. And there's about 800 tropical butterflies flying around. It's an oasis, and kids love it. They also take care of a 1,700-gallon reef aquarium, which is one of the largest saltwater reef displays in the Northeast, which in many fronts is more challenging than dealing with the butterflies, I can attest to. And in keeping with the late night theme, what I really wanted to share with you guys was a top 10 list that will hopefully, there'll be a few things on here that these are things that I wish I had known 20 years ago when I graduated. You know that Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien, all the late night wars that have been going on recently, well, back when I was sitting in your seat it was Jay Leno and David Letterman, and who was going to take over for Johnny Carson. And David Letterman was the edgy creative comedian, and he started doing his top 10 list, which he's still doing to this day. And now I know that David Letterman is, the old guy now, and the top 10 lists aren't exactly fresh. But when I was going to school, that was the big thing, is knowing what his top 10 lists were. So I'm just going to go through some of them quickly. The first here is find a mentor. When I graduated, I had no idea how important it was to really have a good mentor. And they're not easy to find. I went out both at the bank and then when I started at Allegheny Arc. The first 10 years I really had no one to bounce things off of, no one who was talking to me about weaknesses I might need to improve or strengths or what direction I could go in. And about halfway through, I did meet who I would consider a mentor, and I still remember a lot of the things that she told me, quotes that she would have. She's a very wise person with a lot of experience, and one of the things she would say is, to succeed, you need to give up the need to be right. When you get out in the real world, there's a lot of stubborn people out there, and it's easy to get stubborn over certain ideas, and the ones that hang on to things invariably have trouble. So I always took that with me, and I used that many times in learning how to work with teams and work in groups and cooperate with people. So my advice would be search out some meaningful mentors early in your career, and they may be even college professors, but especially when you get out there, try to find somebody in an organization. It doesn't even have to be in the same field. My mentors were vice presidents for guest services and vice presidents for human resources, and those were the people that when I look back, they helped me out the most. I wish I would have had them earlier. The next one is build your brand. There's a very good book called Career Warfare, and basically says that leadership is influence. And even if you're not in a leadership position, you can have influence by earning trust. Everybody always thinks of branding in terms of a product or a service, but you are a brand. And especially if you get out in a larger organization, people are known by their reputations. So think in terms of how people are viewing your actions. There's the fundamental attribution error states that if I miss a deadline or don't succeed on something, I know the reasons behind it. But somebody looking at that situation has no idea. So they're just going to see somebody that didn't meet a deadline or somebody that failed. So, always think in those terms and make sure you come through and make sure you view your actions in the same way that others will. Build that brand. Candor is important. Jack Welch wrote a whole book called Winning, and his major point in that was that candor is essential in an organization. Most organizations fail because they stop being honest with themselves. They get large, they get a little cocky, it gets a little easy, and they stop really looking at themselves honestly. So whatever position of responsibility you end up with in an organization, make sure you're not just telling the truth, but you're saying things that need to be said. It's just like the doctor, that maybe you go to your doctor and you say, this is my diet, I've been gaining weight, am I going to have an issue? And honesty is the doctor will say yes. What you really want is a doctor that will give you that feedback before you even arrive at that conclusion and say, if you don't be careful, this is what's going to happen in the future. It's pretty much being proactive and letting people know what's really going on in your area as opposed to letting them discover it on themselves. There's a lot of talk about getting the right people on the bus.